Hey there, welcome to the channel. If you've never been here before, my name is Ryan, and why I'm doing this video is simply answering questions that my subscribers sent me. Some of them are about me personally, and some of them are just more about piano in general. First up here, we have Mike L. Composition asking me who is my favorite modern composer. I'm going to take modern as like more literally. Technically, people in the 1900s we call modern, but some of them have been dead for like nearly 100 years at this point. So counting composers who are still alive today. I really like what Philip Glass has done, just kind of in really broad strokes, taking it, minimalism, those ideas, and incorporating them into pieces that fit the piano really, really well. But if I went just off my probably favorite sound of a composer that's still alive today, I would say Arvo Pärt or Pärt. I'm not actually quite sure how to say his name. He's an Estonian composer, and he just writes some of the most mysterious sounding piano works. Like his way he combines noises together on the piano, like the lows and highs and the mixtures of textures. He's just a master of texture. I wish I knew how to say his name. If you're Estonian and you're watching this, let me know how to pronounce his name, because I think he writes really cool music. I really love this next question from Pro Squid Gaming, which is, what is the best piano key signature? Now, there's a lot of debate, I feel like, amongst musicians. Like certain instruments, different instruments have keys that are really good for their instrument. I feel like piano is a little more divided. However, for me personally, I love playing in the flat keys. D flat is probably my favorite key to play in. I think the key of D flat just fits so well under the hands. It feels great, the chunking of the groups of black keys, not having as many white keys. It just feels really nice. Also, so many of your chords can be up on the black keys. They're easier to reach and maneuver within. So D flat's great. Now, if we're talking about what key are my favorite pieces in, there's a lot of great pieces in the key of A flat. Another reason to like flat keys. I think A flat and D flat have so many good pieces. So I love the flats. Obviously, you can find 100 examples of pieces that I love with sharps, but just first thing that comes to mind, love those flats. Okay, Raffo Baffo asks, what's the hardest piece I have ever learned? Okay, this is a really good question, and it's difficult to answer because, for one, I don't necessarily know which one was the hardest, but also because I know not all of you will agree which one was the hardest. So I think the most flashy piece I have probably ever played is the Liszt Tarantella. It's very impressive. If you heard someone play that piece, you would probably think it was the hardest piece I'd played, especially if you don't play super advanced music yourself. It's the one that's just going to sound the most impressive and just make you think like, wow, you're so good at piano. That's so hard. It's really impressive, and it's really hard. I'm not belittling that piece at all. It's an extremely, extremely hard piece of music. I played Beethoven, Waldstein, Opus 101 are probably the hardest two Beethovens I've completely learned. But I think the sneaky pick that lots of you will not think is the hardest piece, but I think if most people actually try for themselves, would be I played Brahms' Handel Variation. It just starts out with a little Handel aria, like from Handel, but it's by Brahms. And then Brahms does 25 variations on it, which are all about 30 seconds to a minute long. Then it ends with a giant, massive fugue. And the fugue is crazy. It's like takes the melody, slows it down by half, does it in octaves, does falling notes, and flips it upside down. I think he flips upside down. Yeah, he definitely flips it upside down point. So I get the feeling that even though the Liszt Tarantella sounds the hardest to play, if you had a whole bunch of top level performers actually have to play one of these pieces, I feel like more of them would pick the Liszt rather than playing just a big, giant structure piece by Brahms with lots of giant chords. You have to be good at a lot of different styles and also an entire flashy kind of show-off fugue at the end. I feel like more people would be afraid of performing that kind of at the top level than the Liszt. Or again, a lot of people seem to be afraid of Beethoven Opus 101 as well. I'm actually curious, if you're watching this video and you have played at least two of the three pieces I just named, which one do you think is harder? Because I actually don't know what kind of the general population of advanced pianists would say. Again, I feel like they would say if they played the Brahms, that's the scariest. But if you haven't played the Brahms, it doesn't seem as intimidating as first as the Liszt for sure, even as the Beethoven. Next question here is kind of a two-parter. How do we efficiently understand music analysis, improvisation, composition, then also how to be better at composing, and they say interested in specifically in developing sonatas and sonatinas. The answer to the first question can go a lot of different ways, but I would say as far as musical analysis, maybe start out with watching some videos that analyze some chords and harmony and structure for you. I have a few on my channel where I've done this, where I kind of go through and analyze chords and where they're going in direction, but just to see how composers do things like build drama. As far as improvisation goes, find a chord progression you like and just have fun with it. Like, even if it's just you're just doing this, maybe throwing in different rhythm patterns. But just my advice in general for composers is do something creative that you want to do. One issue we have with composition is there can be these large, not issue, but it's kind of an issue, a large movement in the classical music community where they're pushing a certain type of innovation. Not saying it's always bad, but what can happen is like, oh, if you want to be creative, you have to do what everyone else is doing. It's going to be different and unique because your unique flavor you're adding to it. And yes, maybe it's not when you first start out super unique, and you'll add that over time. If you're going to be a composer, I want to know what you want to write. I want to hear your compositions. I just don't want you to go around and say, well, this is exactly what composers are supposed to do. If you want to specifically develop sonatas, sonatinas, make sure you know all those work, and then write things that you think sound good for yourself. Okay, Violentamento Pacifico 3500 ask, top quality digital piano or low quality acoustic piano? Which one is better? That is such a good question. And sometimes it does depend on your situation. Like, I have an acoustic piano, an upright, and I have a grand. I use this for recording videos because it's so easy to plug in. The sound stays pretty good for the audience. There's not an issue of the sound overwhelming the microphone and all this stuff. So there are reasons why these can be nice. A couple things I will say, just kind of briefly to answer this question. A full-size 88 key keyboard is not that much smaller than upright acoustic piano. A lot of people I know are like, well, I would love to get an acoustic piano, like an upright piano, but I don't have room side to side, so I'm going to get a keyboard. I've heard this so many times. If you measure them, it might be a couple inches differently, but the keys are going to be exactly the same. Now, the electric is definitely easier to move around for sure. So it does have some more conveniences as far as that goes. But a couple big misconceptions. One of them is, at least in the USA right now, as far as prices go, you can get a good, decent quality acoustic piano. People kind of think like, oh, it's going to be 10 times as much as the keyboard. It's not true. You sometimes free because people just don't know what to do with them, just kind of sitting in houses. The electric pianos are hard to find shoes because you're dealing with the electronics. The electronics are more likely to wear down. You don't have pianos from the 80s that are full-size 88 key keyboards being sold used from the 80s, but you do have that with the acoustics. As far as like touch goes, really nothing compares to a real piano unless you have an extremely expensive keyboard that has a real piano action put in. But even those actions still have a little bit of a fake feel to them. So I guess I'll kind of add to your question a little bit. I love a cheap grand piano more than both those options because grand pianos just have that touch. If they're really cheap, I can do little things to tweak them, make them better. But just that touch is hard to replicate on any upright, then especially on a keyboard. But almost all the time, if someone's like, I want to spend like $1,000 on a keyboard, I just say like, is there any way you could take that money, take a few $100s for the moving of a piano if you have to pay a movers, and then take that money and put it into an acoustic because you're probably going to be happier in the long run. All right, Lazarus Come Forth 676 is the most patient person on my entire channel because he asked this question: how far should you sit from the piano? And you're a good person who asked it when I first made a call for doing a question and answer video a while ago, and then I couldn't do it in that video because I couldn't find a good way for the camera to show what I was talking about. So I just said, hey, I'll get you on the next one. And then I did a live stream the other day where I answered some of these questions just kind of live for fun. And I answered that question because I was sitting at my grand piano doing this live stream. And then because Google live stream technology is really frustrating and annoying, what I'm going to do is take a snippet of that and just put it in right here. We're going to start with distance away from the piano. It's funny because you see a lot of people do it very wrong. Before I say this, I will qualify. Am I a better piano player than Glenn Gould, who sits really weird? No. I know there's exceptions. So I'm going to tell you is the most safest, the most basic way to kind of approach this. Let's start with distance from the keys. Right now during this video, I am sitting too close to the piano because I'm sitting at my desk. I have a random desk pulled up right by my piano, which is not normally here. I can hardly even open the door because the desk is in the way. So don't say, well, during your video, you sat really close. And also during my normal set of videos, I also don't sit how I would say you should sit because I'm sitting at a keyboard. I'm trying to sit really low so that I can get in the camera shot because my head's too high or else the camera has to be too far away. I don't have enough room. So don't do what I do in these videos unless I'm setting up to just film piano. The easiest test to do for distance away from the piano is just make a fist and reach your hands out as far as you can, but like at the keys. And they should be able to extend basically all the way. Like you should be able to do this and not, see, I should be able to reach my arm out like this and be pretty close. Put my arm out like this, I'm too far away. You could play this way, but I'm so extended. The upper extremes of the piano, let me show you my left arm, are so far away from me. Again, I'm pretty tall. I have a pretty good reach. That's too far away. The classic someone is doing it right look you're looking for is look at me from the side. My elbow is slightly in front of the middle of my body like this. If your arm is tucked back here, that's not good. Your arm is too much by your body. You have trouble crossing over if you're that close. You're playing and your arm is back here. So you want your arm way out here, not back here, slightly forward. So this is like straight down, slightly forward. Also, you want to sit on the front side of your bench. So if you're bench, you don't want to sit on the back of your bench, or else you're going to kind of lean. Now, as far as height goes, you want to basically think about your neutral position, okay? This is too low. See how there's a curve? Same thing, this is too high. You see this curve? That's too high because I have this constant curve in my wrist. Now, when you play piano, you will not keep your wrist tight like this. You're not going to play piano like this. You're going to play and bend your wrist up and down. You play chords. You might have like movement here. But what you're not going to do, first of all, is be stiff. But if you're starting like this, it's hard to bounce because you're too high. If you're starting like this, it's hard to bounce because you're too low. Again, not the whole time. And I'm playing, I'm going to do like... But my neutral, my starting position is here. My starting position is not here where I'm reaching up and see the bend in my wrist. It's also not way up here where I'm like this big hill downward down to the piano where I just don't have as much flexibility. Up next, we have Kat who asks, how did you start learning piano? What motivated you and led you to the point where you are now? Here's the thing. When I was a kid, I was one of these kids who was like super into everything. Like I remember so clearly wanting to be a vet. Like I was determined. I was like getting books and reading about animals. I was like the most motivated like 10-year-old ever. I was going to be a vet. And it lasted about a week or two, but I dived really deep for that week or two. But the motivation typically died away. And when I started piano, I just dived really deep. I loved it. I started playing at church, kind of chord music, started playing classical music, like lessons at the same time. I just practiced all the time. And at one point I was like 17, 18, trying to decide what to do with my life. And I got an undergrad, kind of the same theory. I got a master's degree. At that point, actually, when I was getting my master's degree, I was thinking I might go all the way to a DMA, which in the performance world, that's kind of like the equivalent of a PhD in research fields. Is we have a doctorate in musical arts, just like the terminal highest level degree you can get. I thought about doing that. Things worked out where I didn't end up getting that degree, and it was great. So I don't necessarily have this like dramatic story of like one time I saw someone performing and I was like, oh. Actually, one time when I was really little, I went to the symphony and I hated it. I was so bored. There was like Ronald McDonald's there too or something, and it was just all kind of weird. All right, I think that's all the questions I have right now. If you have anything that I left out or questions you just didn't get to ask, put them in the comments below. I'll try to keep track of them, and at some point in the future, do another one of these. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.